August has been a wild ride, and that ride is not over yet. So buckle your seatbelts because we are heading toward the full moon in Aquarius, which will occur on the 19th of August, 2024, or thereabouts, depending on where it is in the world that you are personally located. This is a whopper of a full moon, and it continues to carry the torch, so to speak, really moving us through a deeper initiation as we continue to integrate the energies of the Lion's Gate portal, the new moon in Cancer in July, and the new moon in Leo that we just experienced at the beginning of August. In this video today, we're going to talk about why this full moon is so powerful and how it is that we can best work with these energies in order to maximize their effects in our lives and really truly reap the benefits of everything that this full moon has to offer. So let's get right into it. During a full moon, we always have the sun and the moon completely opposite each other in the sky. And during this particular full moon, we have the moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius, while the sun is at 27 degrees of Leo, conjunct Mercury retrograde and the asteroid Vesta. Now, Vesta represents home and hearth. She represents our own soul fire and how it is that we tend to the fire of our own souls, as well as how it is that we nurture and tend to everything that has deep value and meaning to us on a soul level in this lifetime. So right off the bat here, we have this beautiful intensity that is really asking us to honor ourselves, to honor our own self-expression, and all the things that make us feel full. So we're being asked before we even begin to make sure that our cup is full as we continue not only to move through this full moon, but to move through our entire ascension process and this human experience. What lights you up? What makes your soul sing? That's what this combination of the sun and Vesta in Leo really wants to know. And it wants us to express that. It wants us to express our love, our passion, to really live out loud. And Mercury retrograde here is only adding more intensity as Mercury moves through his retrograde, which began on the new moon in Leo. Mercury is going through a period of revising, of revisiting, of looking at all different aspects of the self. Mercury began his retrograde in the sign of Virgo. And a few days after Mercury entered retrograde in Virgo, he came into conjunction with Venus in Virgo. And this was a powerful heart-opening activation point the day before the 888 portal pinnacle, which is, of course, on 8/8. And there are videos on this for those who have not watched those yet. I'll link some of those at the end of this video. But it was a beautiful heart activation, a purification of the mind and the heart, and a rebalancing. And as we move through Mercury retrograde, we're continuing to balance the head and the heart. We're continuing to work through some of these themes when it comes to self-care, when it comes to self-love, when it comes to releasing the inner critic, when it comes to having that courage to express ourselves, to love and be loved. And one of my favorite quotes that I share all the time from Rumi is coming into my consciousness as I'm talking about this right now. And that quote is, "Our task is not to seek for love, but to seek within ourselves all the barriers that we have built against it." So as Mercury moves through this retrograde, there's going to be a powerful energy of this, of revisiting these themes, of really looking at what are the barriers that I have placed within myself against love? And what is the fear or the wounding underneath that? For a lot of people, it comes from abandonment. There's an abandonment wound. And that's where we get into those energies of, I'm going to leave somebody else before they leave me, right? Better to leave than to be left. It's not letting people in at all. There are all different ways that this plays out. The self-critic comes into this as well, right? When we are used to others beating us down and berating us, we take on that role within ourselves, almost in a way to sort of toughen ourselves up. Like there's nothing more cruel that anybody can say to me than what I say to myself. It's that kind of a thing. It's all of these painful habits and ways of being and living that block us off, not just from love in the traditional sense. A lot of people, when they hear the word love, they think of romantic love. right? Or even family or friends, but this is any kind of love. This is the love of the universe, the eternal love. Our specific universe was built upon love. That is the underlying frequency of this planet and of this particular universe. So if we can't tap into the frequency or the vibration of love, we can't connect with the cosmic heart. We can't connect with all that is. It is so important that we allow these barriers that we've built within ourselves to begin to break down. And it is scary. It is so scary sometimes to allow that, because those were our protections, right? But one thing that I know from personal experience, having been a drug addict for about 10 years of my life, was that the things that initially help us, the things that initially make surviving this world, which is where a lot of us are for a very long time, right? In that survival mode. A lot of those things that facilitate that process in the beginning end up being our greatest barriers and end up being our greatest challenges, right? So at first it helps us and then it hurts us. But we're so used to it. We're so comfortable with that habit, with that pattern, with that mode of being or seeing the world, with whatever that thing was that once gave us comfort, that even though it's become uncomfortable, we have difficulty letting go. And this full moon, the energies within this full moon acknowledge that. But they say, even though you're scared, it's time to dig deep, right? Find that courage. Like Leo, the lion, is all about the courage. Find that courage within yourself to break free, to be open, to be vulnerable. Heal those hurts. Allow the love in to heal that, because that's the greatest irony here, right? Is the one thing that can truly heal us from the wounds of our past is the one thing that we are now so afraid of. Because that's how that wound was created in the first place. We loved something or someone, and they let us down. They betrayed us in some sense. They hurt us, they disappointed us. So how ironic that the thing that, from that perspective, allowed us to be vulnerable enough to have that wound inflicted on us in the first place is now the thing that needs to heal us. It's one of many paradoxes, we'll say, within this universe. So let that love in. That's what Spirit wants us to know. That's what Spirit wants us to do. Now, this full moon is being squared by Uranus. Uranus is actually squaring both the moon and the sun, Mercury-Vesta combo that we have going on across the sky. And this is what's known as a T-square, because we have an opposition with another planet squaring both sets of opposing planets. In this case, one set, one single with the moon, right? So this is sometimes referred to as a talent square. This is a point of high tension. And what makes this very interesting is the fact that Uranus is one of the rulers of this moon, being one of the rulers of Aquarius. Aquarius actually has two rulers, the ancient ruler being Saturn, which we will get into in a moment, and the modern ruler being Uranus. And both of these planets are very active during this full moon. So that Uranus energy, as some may remember, is still in a loose conjunction with the asteroid Sedna. Uranus is at 27 degrees of Taurus and Sedna is at 1 degree of Gemini. So this is an out of sign conjunction. But in some ways that makes conjunctions, it gives them more spice, right? Because there's more diversity. So we're working with the Gemini energies as well as the Taurian energies. And we're working with these themes. We got into this a little bit in other videos of abandonment, which is so funny because all of that just came through about abandonment, right? So that's what this energy is all about. Sedna represents when we abandon ourselves in order to please others. She also represents, as many of these beautiful feminine asteroids do, a process of transformation and initiation. Sedna was asked to choose a partner She did not want to be married to any of the men that the society and her father wanted to choose for her. But finally, she did choose a suitor, even though she preferred to be alone, in order to please her father and to please others. This ended up being we'll say a very unhappy marriage, right? A very toxic partnership. This man was not who he presented himself as. And so Sedna pleaded with her father to come and rescue her, and he did. But when he did, this man, or this being that Sedna was married to, created this storm upon the ocean. And her father, fearing for his life, actually threw her overboard in order to appease her husband so that he would be spared. And so we see these brutal wounds of betrayal. But underneath that, we see this underlying wound. We see the first betrayal that happened, not the betrayal of Sedna's husband or her father, but when she betrayed herself by agreeing to something that she did not want. So there's this huge energy here, especially with Uranus combined with Sedna, of being who we truly are, accepting and loving and honoring who we are, and standing by our own choices, refusing to abandon ourselves for others. And I apologize for the noise in the background. I have a small child. I'm just having to embrace it and roll with it. Some of those things in life. So we have this understanding of what happens when we abandon ourselves. There is something being brought into our awareness with this T-square with Uranus and Sedna. During this full moon, something within ourselves that we are being asked to embrace, that we are being asked to accept, something that we've hidden about ourselves, hidden away in the darkness, hidden away in the shadows, perhaps even from our own selves, is really what this feels like to me. It's like some aspect of who we truly are that is yearning to be seen, that is yearning to be heard, that is yearning to break free. Because remember, as we move through this ascension process and through this human experience in general, even if we weren't in an ascension, it's all about the beautiful light that we came here to shine. And in order to shine our unique light, we have to be our unique selves. We don't need a million carbon copies of the same person on this planet. We need all the differentiations of source energy that we are. Source created the multiverse in order to have different experiences, to experience itself through all different beings, all different versions of possibility. So when we deny ourselves the experience of truly being who we are and exploring that in its totality, we deny source of that experience as well. And those people watching this who are looking for their soul tribe, they're looking for their divine partner, counterpart. They're trying to find their purpose and their passion. We're never going to find that if we don't embrace who we truly are, because that's where all that unique energy lies. That's where our creative genius lies. The frequency that we exude when we step into the truth of who we are is what attracts our soul tribe. It's what attracts our divine counterpart, right? So if we are denying that, if we are trying to fit into a mold or a box because we think that's what society wants us to do, that's what our partner, that's what our family, our friends, we're missing out on everything that's meant for us by chasing that which is not. So that's a big part of what this energy of this full moon is bringing into our awareness. Now, there's a second part to this full moon that is equally powerful. And this is the fact that this full moon is occurring during the first opening square of the Great Conjunction of 2020. And this involves the ruler of this full moon, Saturn, as well as Jupiter. In 2020, on 12/21/2020, we had Jupiter and Saturn meet at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I did videos on this for people who want to look back. It would be under the astrological ascension videos or major planetary alignments. If you look under some of those, you'll be able to find these old videos, because this was a very powerful time. This was the initiation of the final leg of the age of Aquarius opening energies. And I say it like that because the astrological ages are not cut and dry. One doesn't just stop and the other one picks right off. We experience a blending of both in the beginning. So we've still been in this period of closing out the age of Pisces as we're moving into the age of Aquarius. It's a transition. It has to be smooth, just like, and for those of you who didn't see the ascension video that I did, the two-third world split, breaking free from the inverted matrix, go ahead and check that out. I will link that at the end of this video as well. That explains the bifurcation of the earths. We're going to get into that a little bit in this video today because this is a major bifurcation point as we are entering this full moon portal here. And 12/21/20 was a major bifurcation point as well. So the earth, and I explained that in the video in more detail than I'm going to go into here, was originally a 5D planet. It fell to a third dimensional planet. And as it began its ascension process, she began splitting off the third dimension. And so as she is splitting apart, and we can imagine it like a Vesica Piscis or a Venn diagram, right? Where we have the 3D, the 5D, and then where they intersect, we have the 4D in the middle. And as she continues to split apart, we're actually going to birth the sixth dimension out from that. So we're in this process of splitting, of bifurcating. And the very beginnings of this process began in 2012, 12/21/2012. In 12/21/2020, when we had that great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius, that was the next major bifurcation point. 2020, 2021 is actually 2012 in the Ethiopian calendar. And we've been talking about this quite a lot. We talked about this extensively in the Lionsgate video. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't checked that out, if you want to understand this more. But the Ethiopian calendar follows a different system, and it's 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar. So 2020, 2021 was 2012 in that calendar. And you can see with the repeating numbers, right? They're all ones, twos, and zeros. And we've been talking about this for many years on this channel, how that is the coding of the matrix and how we've been recoding the matrix. So that was a huge point, another huge splitting point. And then we had another huge splitting point on 12/21/21. I feel this energy really is going from 12/12 to 12/21. That's the gateway of energy where this process is occurring. And it's very interesting to know that this opening square of Saturn and Jupiter is going to happen in 3 parts because the planets are retrograde. Right now, Saturn is retrograde. Then Saturn will turn direct and Jupiter will go retrograde. And then they'll meet. So they'll meet once with Saturn retrograde, Jupiter direct. A second time with Jupiter retrograde and Saturn direct. And a third time when both planets are direct. And this is the first of those 3 squares. The second one occurs on 12/24/24, 12/24/24. All right, so just outside of that 12/21 gateway, but with this repeating sequencing code of numbers, it feels very much tied into all of that. And these squares, you know, they come into the exactness of the squares on Christmas Eve, on the 24th, Christmas Eve, for those who celebrate, right? The alleged birth of Jesus, although those who are following this channel know that 9/11 was actually Jesus's original birthday, according to the Ethiopian calendar. But it's beautiful that, you know, we can look at this through all the different lenses. So even the 24th Christmas Eve, there is sort of a synchronicity to that, in that that is what's widely recognized as Yeshua's birthday by Christians, right? And this process is a returning to the Christ consciousness, which is a consciousness. It is a state of being that Yeshua came here to exude, to bring to this planet, to reintroduce to the consciousness of this planet. And he births in each and every single one of us as we remember the true beauty of who he was and is within our hearts. The beautiful ascended master who came here to guide and to teach, and who continues to activate within our hearts with that Christ consciousness and lead us back home to that 5th, 6th dimension, back home within ourselves, further along the path that leads us back home to source. right? So that's really, really beautiful that that second square is happening then. And this first one is happening during this full moon, right after the Lionsgate portal. You can't make this stuff up, you guys. It's incredible. So we had that conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and they had met in Capricorn before, and then they kind of moved together into Aquarius, which was really beautiful. And I talk about that in the video that I referenced for people who want to look it up. And then they had that beautiful, beautiful meeting. And guess who's at 0 degrees of Aquarius right now? Pluto. So this point is being activated by Pluto as Jupiter and Saturn make their first square. And for those who want to understand this process, when planets have a conjunction, they begin a brand new cycle together of the unification of their energies. And then there are 3 check-in points along the way. So the first 90 degrees is the first square. Then it comes to 180 degrees, which is the opposition. Then the 90 degrees again on the other side, which is another square. And then they come back together once more. And for Jupiter and Saturn, this is a 20-year cycle. It's pretty much like clockwork with them. Something that was really powerful about this current cycle that began with that great conjunction in 2020 was the fact that they were much closer together in their conjunction than they typically are. So the power was felt more. And they were also initiating a new 200-year cycle within the air signs. They had spent the bulk of the last 200 years in earth signs. And now they're moving into conjunctions in air signs. So that's really beautiful and really powerful. We're getting that fresh energy coming in. I believe they had one conjunction in Libra, I think it was, within that 200-year cycle, but it was primarily earth. And now we're moving into the air. We're moving into the ideas. We're moving into this mutable, changeable kind of an energy, right? It's refreshing. It's new. It's exciting. So this was a really beautiful aspect of that conjunction as well. So as we're experiencing this full moon, we're also experiencing this opening square here. And this opening square is our first check-in point with these energies. When Saturn and Jupiter get together, a lot of times there are changes in leadership. We're being asked to question what's working and what's not. When they first came together in that conjunction, that's the birthing of a new cycle. So this is a new cycle in leadership. This is a new cycle of morals, ideals, and values, and the structures and the boundaries of those structures that we create around that. So as we move through this process over the next 20 years, we're going to have these check-in points, the first one that we've arrived at now. So in our own individual lives, this is going to look like, what are those new morals, values, ideals, beliefs that I have generated within myself? And how do those still fit? Do those still resonate for me? Are those being challenged? And in the face of that challenge, am I willing to adapt where adaptation is necessary? And am I willing to hold my ground where it's important to hold my ground? We may have opportunities to act upon our newfound beliefs, values, and ideals. And for a lot of people, this has to do with their first spiritual awakening, because a lot of people awakened for the first time in 2020. We had that initial sort of turning on, if you will, during the 444 portal energies in April. And then as we continued to move through 2020, the way that I'm being shown, or I'm seeing it right now, is like, that's when the switch was flipped. And then the curiosity came in. People started researching. They started looking within. They started looking for more information, started questioning their reality. And there was a big point of realization, some type of epiphany, some sort of understanding that was crystallizing around the time of that first bifurcation point and the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn in 2020 at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And so in that process, a brand new set of values, ideals, and beliefs were generated. Now we're getting to a check-in point where more information is being revealed. We're seeing what works and what doesn't. And we're being asked to discard, to let decay and die that which is decaying and dying, because that is something that Saturn represents. Decay and death, right? Saturn is the Lord of time. Saturn wants us to take a really good look at this and to not get stuck into one idea of something. A lot of people think of Saturn as rigid, But Saturn is not, I mean, Saturn was also the ruler of Aquarius back in the day, right? Which is fixed air. So there is a rigidness to that, but there's also an expansiveness to it. Saturn just wants us to realistically look at what's working and what's not. To be practical about things, to use a word that a good friend of mine absolutely hates, but it really applies here, right? So like we said, there are going to be experiences for some that challenge these new beliefs and ideals, new information coming in, new knowledge. What do I do with this? How does this fit into the new belief structure that I've assimilated here? There may be opportunities to act upon and solidify our morals and our ideals as well, right? Our newfound beliefs are going to be put to the test in every way, shape, and form to see what will stand the test of time and what is ready to go. Because we are continuing to crystallize these energies over this 20-year cycle. So we need these check-in points of accountability. So for each and every single one of us on a personal and also a collective level, this really boils down to the timeline that we've chosen for our ascension. Are we aligned with that timeline? Are the choices that we're making aligning ourselves with that version of us, with that highest version of us? Are we choosing from love, or are we still choosing sometimes from fear? And if we're still choosing from fear, what is the fear that is motivating our choices and decisions? And how can we begin to bring that to light so that we can heal it? So that it's no longer holding us prisoner. The shadow is all about the energy of victimization. We are a victim to something. As long as we ignore it, as long as we pretend it doesn't exist. Right? We talked about this, I think, in the two-third world split, the ascension video. Once we acknowledge something for what it is, we begin that process of taking our power back. So like working through the shadow is working through the energy of victimhood, of powerlessness, and taking our power back. So we want to be aware of this. We want to be aware, and it can be that simple to just break it down like that. Am I choosing out of love, or am I choosing out of fear? What are my goals, dreams, and desires? Something beautiful that's happening during this opening square is it's not happening on its own. It's happening with Saturn in an opposition to Venus, which effectively creates a T-square, as Venus is also squaring Jupiter, who happens to just have come out with a conjunction with Mars. You really can't make this up. It's so crazy. So on the 14th, we had the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. And they're the focal point of this particular T-square, where we have the opposition of Venus now at 17 degrees of Virgo, opposing Saturn at 17 degrees of Pisces, both being squared by Jupiter at 17 degrees of Gemini. Mars, I think, has moved on to about 19 degrees or so of Gemini. So their conjunction is breaking up now, but that was a big surge of power there. This was an energy where Jupiter puffs up Mars. Jupiter makes Mars feel larger than life in some ways. There's a lot of inspiration that comes through with this meeting of Mars and Jupiter. We're feeling like we can accomplish a lot, especially in Gemini. We're very energized. We're ready to go. There's new ideas being generated, inspirations being generated. But Jupiter with Mars, Jupiter being the stronger of the two energies, as it is a slower moving planet, is asking Mars to check in. Are your actions truly divinely inspired? Are your choices expanding you or contracting you? Right? Because the choices that expand us are chosen out of love. The choices that contract us are chosen out of fear. So we see these energies continuing to play out, these questions continuing to come full circle. How can we expand ourselves more? How can we act in alignment with our true morals, ideals, and values? How can we act with integrity? All right, so this was a big energy. And Jupiter is still being jazzed by this meeting with Mars, and Mars is still influencing this conversation. Venus in Virgo is that energy that's all about, remember, pretty recently fresh out of her conjunction with Mercury retrograde, who is now conjunct the sun. And she is in this beautiful Virgo energy, Yes, she may be feeling a bit insecure, especially when she comes into opposition with Saturn. She's learning how to love herself. She's learning how to care for herself. She's learning how to ask for what she desires, what she deserves. She's also wanting to become better. She's purifying herself within the sign of Virgo. So there's a self-care check-in point coming up again. And there's an energy here with Saturn and Pisces. Remember, Saturn and Pisces is always asking us to take energetic responsibility, to look at what within our spiritual, like what within our world is connecting us and disconnecting us from our spirits. And Venus is asking us the same thing. She's asking us, it's the quote that we started the video with, right? What barriers within ourselves have we built against love? And to start that process, to start that journey of breaking those barriers down by loving ourselves. This is a great time to pick up a spiritual practice or a spiritual routine to really get good with our spiritual hygiene, as we say on here quite a bit. Really be looking at that. We're going to be moving into Virgo season a couple days after this full moon, which is all about that energy. So this is giving us a great jump start for that energy. There's just so much going on here. And it's all about staying in our hearts. It's all about staying in our hearts and allowing our hearts. Remember, they've been expanded by that conjunction of Venus and Mercury, by the Lionsgate energies, the new moon in Leo, even that new moon in Cancer conjunct Sirius, right, that we had in July, really kicking off the first leg of the Lionsgate energies and the Sirius gateway. Continue letting that heart get bigger. And be aware of whatever is coming up. There may be a lot of stuff coming up. Honestly, this hasn't been a smooth and harmonious experience for me. I had some really beautiful moments during all of this being the Lionsgate portal and everything that's transpired throughout the month of August. I've had some really hard moments too. There have been disagreements that have come up with people. There have been grievances that have had to be aired. There have been little mishaps, which probably has a lot to do with the Mercury retrograde as well, right? I know everybody always blaming Mercury. There have been some hard truths that I have had to look at about myself, the way that I approach my reality, the way that I approach my relationships, the way that I approach my relationship with myself, my own health, my own well-being, right? It's not always pretty. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. But it's necessary, right? This is the Saturnian energy coming in. This is how we grow. This is how we evolve. It is a messy process. So we have to look at it as beautiful in its messiness, as beautiful chaos, right? I'm thinking of there's a 311 song that I used to love. I think somebody actually mentioned it in the comments on one of the videos. It was a song, one of their favorite songs as well. Beautiful Disaster. That's what it was. I used to love that song. I still do. That's what it is. Allow yourself to be a beautiful disaster right now. And always, right? Allow yourself to be exactly where you are at and love yourself in that place. We're all beautiful disasters, right? We are all beautiful chaos unfolding in perfect divine timing and order. What looks like chaos, and this is reminding me of another quote. What is it? Like, what's normal for the spider is chaos to the fly. It's like from our perspective, it looks like chaos, but from the divine perspective, it's all perfectly choreographed and it's all happening in perfect, like we said, divine time. It's all unfolding perfectly. You are unfolding perfectly. So honor yourself, honor this journey. And don't be hard on yourself about any of this. This is just a check-in point. Where are we at? Where are we at on our timeline, our own personal timeline, as well as the collective timeline for ascension? Like we said, this is changes in leadership we see around this time, right? That conjunction happened in 2020. This check-in point now happening right as we move toward the next election. And we're going to talk more about that kind of stuff on Rumble. We're not getting into that too much on here. If you haven't followed me on Rumble yet, go ahead and do so. We're going to start live streaming there in the next couple weeks. hopefully very, very soon in the next couple weeks, I am planning. But yeah, there's a lot of changes with that type of stuff. A lot of changes in the collective morals, values, and ideals. And really looking at those old systems and saying what is working and what's not. And who has been a primary player in this journey of dismantling the old systems? Pluto, of course, as he moved through Capricorn. Now Pluto is sitting at that degree point of the Great Conjunction, that 0 degree of Aquarius point. And during the second of these 3 opening squares, Pluto is actually going to be at 0 degrees of Aquarius again. He will have retrograded back into Capricorn for the final time and then be back at 0 degrees of Aquarius on 12/24/24 when we have that second opening square. And the third opening square is happening in June. I believe it's the 15th of June. And in that square, Saturn is going to be at 1 degrees of Aries, and we're going to have Jupiter at 1 degree of Cancer. So totally different signs moving into fresh new energies. All right, and that's going to be beautiful and exciting as well. And we'll get into that as it gets closer. But right now, it's just about that simple question. How do we remain as aligned with the true beauty of ourselves as possible? With the true beauty of our hearts? How do we honor this journey that we are on, both for ourselves and everybody else? Because remember, everybody's on an ascension journey right now. And we all struggle in different ways, and it looks all different types of different ways because we are all, like we said, different emanations, beautiful emanations of source, love, light, energy. It's just like a snowflake, right? Every snowflake is unique, and each one holds its own unique beauty. But the way that beauty evolves is going to look differently. So allow people to go through their process. Try not to judge. Try to stay out of judgment. Judgment is a killer of vibration. And this is one of the reasons that we are trained to be judgmental of ourselves, of others, because it keeps us in a low vibration. Look at all the polarity in the world right now. All of the fighting, the chaos, pitting people against each other. This has been a tactic that's been used since the beginning of time, right? And it is a very, very effective one, because if we're fighting each other, we don't notice and we aren't paying attention, and we can't unify and come together to fight the thing that is actually causing the problems in the first place. And if you want to know more about what that thing is, check out the video I just did on the Ascension, as well as the video in the live stream playlist and the Ascension information playlist. It's about what is the AI inverted matrix and how do we ascend out. All right, check out those 2 videos. But this is a check-in point collectively as well. Where are we going? How has what we wanted, what we believe in, what's important to us shifted and changed? And how can we shift and change and alter the power structures in order to reflect that, to represent that? Right, so it's big, big stuff. We can see how it all aligns perfectly, as it always does, reminding us that all we need to do to align perfectly is to drop back in here. I love you. I honor you. I respect you. I thank you for being here, for being on this journey with me, with all of us on this tribe. If you're new and you're still watching, go ahead and subscribe. You belong here. Welcome home. I am so glad that you are here as we walk this journey, this path of ascension together. And if you want any assistance, if you are drawn to my energy, you would like to work with me one-on-one, all of my information is in the description box below. I offer tarot, astrology readings, energy healing sessions, entity removal sessions, hypnosis, past life regression, so many different things, one-on-one coaching. It would be my honor and privilege to assist you. This is such a major time for each and every one of us to step into our life mission, our purpose, our dharma, or the next evolution of it, right? Because as we always say on here, our purpose evolves as we do, right? But so many light workers stepping into their power right now, finding their voice, shining their light. And that is what fills my cup, is helping you to learn how to fill yours, how to shine your light, because it's so important that we all shine our individual lights. We are those lighthouses, those beacons, as more and more people begin to awaken. All right, we are the forerunners, everybody finding this channel. And they need us. The world needs you. It needs your voice. It needs your light. It needs your message. And that seems like a perfect way to end this message. I'll talk to you all soon.